Hey guys, Pascal here. For this week's episode, we had a 2-hour special for the KYRS Spring Fund Drive. In the first hour, Sellers and I were joined by Daniel Walters and Hedge, who talked about their reporting process. In the second hour, Luke joined us to talk about his career in journalism, how he's seen the field change over time, and more. You can find relevant articles, other podcast episodes, and more on our website, rangemedia.co. Thanks for listening, and on to the show.
You're listening to KYRS Medical Lake Spokane. This is Free Range, a co-production of KYRS and Range Media. This is Erin. I'm here with the other Erin.
And me, Pascal.
We're also, we've got Pascal here and Daniel's here.
Hello.
We've got a full house today. All the mics got people on them.
Mm-hmm. And that's because it's a special occasion. In case you're just tuning in, this is the It's the Spring KYRS Fund Drive. And if you didn't know, KYRS is an independent news station. That means it relies on your support to keep it going. So if you want to help us keep this kind of independent radio on the air, you can call 509-747-3807 to pledge. Or you can text Give KYRS to 44321. If you are listening to me in your car radio right now, please don't text and drive. Pull over to the side of the road, then you send that text. We've got a couple of membership levels that you can support at. For $36 or more, you get the KYRS newsletter and the KYRS bumper sticker. And if you give $120 or more a year, you get both of those things, plus a cool t-shirt. If you donate $300 or more, you get all of that, plus a mug and a cloth face mask. And if you have $1,000 or more that you can give to support KYRS this year, you get a premium business membership, which includes 1 full year of announcements on the KYRS program of your choice, plus 1 month as the KYRS Tower Guardian, and all of that other stuff I said before. Okay, so this is Free Range, and we're going to do it a little different today. Instead of talking about depressing news, we are all going to share some fun that we've had for the Fun Drive. So we're going to talk about some reporting or a story that we worked on that was fun. And we're going to start with Daniel and Hedge because they both have to skedaddle after the first hour. Which one of you two wants to share some fun you've had?
I'll go. I'll also say that most of the fun I've had have been working on depressing stories. But I will say that, so I had a story. This is maybe about a decade ago, but my grandma, there's a flood in my grandma's house, and so it was like she was getting rid of a lot of books that had been, trying to just kind of get rid of some of the books. And so she gave me an old copy of essays by Ralph Waldo Emerson that are basically, it was like, I don't know, like 1920s book or something like that. And so I opened it up and, there's all the essays with Ralph Waldo Emerson in there, but there's also this poem in the front. There's like a handwritten poem. It says, "To my angel in the blue," and it was signed. It was this poem that was like, it seemed like kind of a relatively amateur poem. Like didn't seem like it was like a professional poem or like referring to somebody. Then it was like signed Elof Theodore Olson, and so to me it was like I was really fascinated. I love like finding little artifacts in old books, or even underlines are fascinating. Like there was like this person 50 years ago that was underlining this book and found the same passage fascinating. Who was he and what did he do? So I had this name and I was like, this is kind of weird. This is his unique name. Whatever happened to this guy? Did he ever end up like marrying his angel in the blue? What who did he end up with? That kind of thing. And so then I realized like, wait, I'm a journalist. I can actually try to like figure this out. And so I started like trying to research it because Elof Theodore Olson is have 3 names. Elof is a relatively unique name, and so it turned out there's like 2 Elof Theodore Olsons in history. And so I think it was like I couldn't quite tell if it was 1929, 1939 the poem was written, but I was able to kind of track it down to like there's an Elof Theodore Olson who was like working in a like doing some of the paperwork for like a shipping company. It was like the same shipping company that Herman Melville worked for when he wrote like Billy Budd and Moby Dick. And so it was like he was this guy working there, and I was able to look through like some of the Ancestry.com records, some of the census records, always living in like a tenement with like 9 other kids, that kind of thing. And he grew up, and he never married, and he died, and so it's like this extra tragedy of like this, there's this, unrequited love is the purest of all loves because it's not like mediated by like rationality or like the actual like humanity of a person. It's only like mediated by the tragedy and the sweetness of that. And so there's this like inherent like tragedy, this person writing this letter to this person he'd never end up with, but it, continuing through all of history to find its way to me. And this story, you'll never know, obviously, that story was written about this poem would be written. But then like I was also able to, through Ancestry.com, track down, I can track down like his living relatives. And so like I found like his relatives who was like this was the person's like great uncle or something. And so I was able to talk to her, interview her, and show her the poem about this. And, it's just like this great moment of like, wow, we can use these tools of research, not just to tell, take down pieces and that kind of thing, which is, all valuable, but also to kind of tell these human pieces, or just like to have this connection that's reaching across generations.
I really love that kind of professional curiosity,
Yeah.
the like, you can turn one little nugget inside a book into a whole story.
Yeah, no, that was a kind of a fun deal. I didn't actually read the Emerson's essays because that seemed fairly boring, but yeah, that was
you got distracted by the front matter.
Yeah, that was probably one of my favorite pieces.
I love that because it's like Ta-Nehisi Coates, who's like he's a pretty like well-known kind of like high-level essayist. He started working, like he got his like he made most of his bones at the Atlantic magazine. He did like I think he was actually in alt weeklies at first when he started out in his career, but he often goes on like shows just like talking about the craft of journalism and writing. He frequently says the thing that he loves most about being a journalist is like you have this license to like if you have a curiosity or a question, you can just like walk up to the person who knows about the thing that you're curious about and ask them the question, because like you have this imprimatur, like I've got this job that I'm doing.
Yeah, I've said that for a while. I think Ta-Nehisi got that from me specifically.
It originated with Daniel.
But there is that real power to be able to look into it. And if you listen to Ta-Nehisi like quotes on a podcast, so he writes basically like oftentimes polemic, so they're very like dramatic kind of like excoriations of racism and of all the systemic problems in society. But like when you listen to him interviewing or talking to someone, or like even being interviewed, you hear that curiosity come through. Even when a person disagrees with him, he's like, that's really interesting. So like he'll say that. It's like, oh wow, this is how a person is able to be like right. Sometimes it's just an acidic pin, but also be able to get along with people in a diverse place like the Atlantic, and intellectually diverse, all sorts of things like that. Or like go and write Captain America comics and things like that. But like he has that sense of like curiosity as well as that sense of injustice, which I think is so useful for a journalist to have.
I was one of the first videos that I remember seeing. I'm pretty new to journalism, and I stumbled across a video of Daniel Walters outside some kind of event in Idaho. This is the Casey Whalen video where you were getting like confronted by this guy that was upset that you were in this space. You had your big camera. And I just remember watching that whole video and being like, wow, this is how a journalist can turn something that feels really crackly and confrontational into a like, wow, I'm curious about that. Tell me more about, what are you doing here? Do you want to talk about this? Like the way that you just so like delicately and empathetically turned that back into questions. Like I was hoping you could talk about that a little bit. Like, was that fun for you?
Kind of. I mean, it was one of those things. It was kind of it was actually like the little bit was because like later on, Dave Riley, who's like a white nationalist kind of guy and kind of an anti-Semite in Idaho, he was there too, and he ended up like taking pictures of me and then like made fun of my bald spot on Twitter, and so that made me sad. But there was like, it was a moment of just kind of like this like moment of where someone is trying to sort of best you and like get your dander up, and and you're able to sort of be, by being calm and clever and playful and understanding what they're what they're wanting from you and what they actually want deep down, like you're able to kind of turn the tables a little bit. And so in that case it was was like, oh, this Casey. I didn't really know who this person was, and he said it's Casey Wayland. Oh, Casey, and I've written about the far right in Idaho so much, and Casey Wayland, he's, right now he's like an anti-Semitic kind of, guy who's kind of extremes, but he's done so many videos where he's recorded the far right in Idaho saying things in a raw way and like talked to them and like uploaded the entire recordings on YouTube. Or sometimes using public records.
Gift for a journalist.
Absolutely. So that's what I told him. Like you were so useful to me because those people won't talk to me, but they'll talk to you. And so like, and I can quote them, and just having that raw. And then we were able to bond over Spokane's extremely slow public records policies because I was working a story there. I was like, okay, can I turn this into a potential, potential story? And so there's sometimes you're able to do that without those people. And the Dave Riley, who I'd written a lot of critical stories on, was like holding the camera, and so I was hoping to kind of like get maybe some information about him. But it was just sort of a moment where it's like, okay, here's like there's, I think, by being like a certain amount of charm and without necessarily giving ground, you can like turn something that could be confrontational into something that's more advantageous. I didn't end up quoting him in stories necessarily, but I thought it was a good kind of moment for sure.
Right. Yeah, it was so clever because it's like sometimes we're tempted, I think, to like empathize with people, and especially when they have these really, like white nationalist beliefs, you never want to give ground on that. But you were able to be like, oh man, we both have had such a hard time getting our public records back from the city. Like,
we might have different like requests of the public records, like, I might request things fewer with the word like Jewish in them, but like, you're like, like he's like different goals, but there are some of those things that are like, I found that like I used to put a lot of like, do like food photography. I'd like make a fancy dish and then like would take a picture and then like share it online. And that was such a bonding experience for everyone. Cause like, no matter who you are, like you can like love great food. Like that's not political necessarily. There are some people on the left and the right that try to make it political, like saying like only these people can do this kind of food. And I'm like, no, you don't like food is the birthright for everyone. Everyone can do every kind of food. And because like it's such a bonding, unifying experience. And so that's something that I find useful as well for trying to talk with those people.
Food is like a humanizing connection, of course. Cool. We're going to talk to Hedge about some fun that he had reporting, but I just want to remind you that this is part of the KYRS Fund Drive, which means that I have to periodically beg you to support independent media. Right now, there is a donation special on where if you call 509-747-3807, our lovely volunteers on the phone will help get you connected to Pledge. And if you're able to give $150, that will get you 2 tickets to Purity Ring, which is a concert at the Knitting Factory on May 23rd at 8 p.m. And each of those tickets is actually worth $100 each. So it's kind of a little bit of a deal. If you were already hoping to see that band, you can just support independent media and then go get tickets to see Purity Ring. All right, moving on from fun drive stuff to talk about Hedge's fun drive for journalism.
My fun drive for journalism. So I was walking across the Monroe Street Bridge on the way over here, and I was like, okay, fun stories. None of the stories I don't think anybody would read the stories that I write and think they're fun. I don't have an example like Daniel's. I'm going to get one soon. Maybe I'll have something ready for the next fun drive.
Next year or next fall, I guess.
But like, even if the stories aren't necessarily like, I do try to like try my best, and Luke, it always like helps me a lot with this, trying to make it like the writing like entertaining and propulsive for the reader. But yeah, like my stories generally aren't like necessarily fun, but the fun that goes into like finding a story, I wanted to talk about that a little bit. So there's this one example. One of my favorite stories that I've written for Range is it's titled, it was published October 10th, 2024, so it's a while ago. But it's titled Home Church, the Tax Man Says a Religious Retreat Must Pay. And it's about this guy who's been kind of a fixture in like local religious communities. His name is KYRS, and he owns this global faith healing or like prayer healing network called the Healing Rooms. And they purport to invite people into their sanctuaries like I think at the Spokane location is 2 times a week, and they pray for people who are like struggling with health issues or like depression or like whatever kind of like health issues they're dealing with, and they pray for them and they say they heal them. There's some dispute as to how true those claims are, but
I wonder if that inspired the new Knives Out movie.
I have not seen it.
It's like right up your alley. It's like about religion, and there's like a woman who's, said she's gone to every modern doctor to try to cure her chronic pain, and it hasn't worked, and so she's now seeing like faith healers, like prayer.
You should see it because the guy who's like there's a big like controversial priest character. And there were lines which seem like almost directly taken from Doug Wilson, like about like feminists and things like that. And I was Leonardo DiCaprio like pointing at the screen saying that's Doug Wilson, and like no one, it was like no, I think it was actually a good movie with like a lot of humanity, like it was critical of religion in some ways, but also very very humane towards it as well.
Okay, sorry, that was a digression.
No, it's okay.
Faith healing.
I'm gonna check it out. So the new Knives Out movie.
Sponsored by.
Underwritten by. No, I'm kidding.
So that's kind of like what the story, like that's who the guy is on the surface. Let's see. I want to get into it. Just
what made finding the story fun?
I want to get into it like through the way that I came to it, and so I was just like I was at a social gathering with some friends a few months before the story published, and we were just talking about like what we did for work, and I was talking about like my work at Range and being a journalist, and I was telling people that I write a lot about Dominionist churches, and specifically On Fire Ministries, Matt Shea's church, and this guy comes up to me and he's like, that's the same property that Cal Pierce owns. Cal leases On Fire Ministries a sanctuary and an office space in this like pretty big campus on Pacific Avenue downtown, and this guy was just like, oh yeah, I'm a he told me he was like a bureaucrat with a state agency that evaluates applications for tax exemptions, and he told me a lot of stories, but he zeroed in on Cal Pierce, and he was talking about how Cal had bought this sort of like $1 million mansion out in 9 Mile. It's not a mansion, but it's a pretty fancy property with 2 large structures on it, lots of square footage, for a little bit more than $1 million about a year prior to our conversation. And this guy, like, his job is to like verify whether the applications for the property tax exemptions are legitimate, and the property tax exemption that Cal had applied for was for a religious thing, for a religious like facility that was offering like actual like services, and they claim in the application that they have church at 10 o'clock on Sundays, and this guy was telling me that like he drove out there 3 Sundays in a row and nobody was there. And he just kind of like took me on this adventure of like trying to investigate this property tax application, and I was my ears went up, and it was just such a I immediately recognized it as a story, and the guy was like, he was real cagey once he realized that I was that I was interested in it journalistically, but he told me where to like what kinds of records I needed to search up, and I got the records, and I called Cal, and I recreated the experiment, the investigation that the guy had done to determine whether it was a religious retreat, and I went out to the property, and it was just like it was so fun, just like. It was a pretty easy story to do. It took a few weeks just because I had to go through the steps, but just like following the footsteps of somebody who does a job that's so like opaque to most of the public, to do a story was really fun. And I feel like really privileged as a journalist to be able to like go on little adventures like that most people would never have the occasion to go on. So that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed. That's like just an example of like how stories come to be. It's fun.
I feel like only journalists look at tax records and think, wow, this is so fun.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's just these documents that you have to, like, every time you get a new kind of document, you have to, like, either have somebody explain to you how to read it or learn how to read it yourself. But it's just like every story that you do is just like a little experiment in getting to understand how government works or how civic life works, or like, just like the flows of how like a society like constructs itself, and even more fun, like a little bit when it goes off the rails or attempts to, at least.
Yeah. I was thinking about stories of yours that I've thought were fun. And of course, because it's news, there's always like a little bit of a depressing bent to it usually. But I was thinking about your story about Zach. And all of the work, you and Ben were getting dinner with this guy. Did you have fun working on that story? And can you tell us a little bit about it for people who might not be familiar with your Zach and the guitar story?
Yeah, that is another fun story. I think that one and the KYRS story are my two favorites that I've written for Range. It's just like the ones that I've enjoyed working on the most. I think I have a lot of good stories, but those two were like just like they were kind of the most fulfilling on a human level, I think. And it's funny, you were actually assigned to that story before I was. You remember this?
No.
Yeah, you really didn't want to do it, and I really wanted to do it, and so we convened.
I'm glad that we could do a swap then.
We convinced Luke that you didn't want to, and I did. And this was like right at the beginning of me working for Range. You too, like you were there like a couple months before I was, but yeah. So where do I start with this story? So let's see, this was in the summer of 2023. There was this charismatic worship pastor named Sean Foyt, who I've written about quite a bit, who he's not out of Spokane, but he has a lot of like ties to the region. He's originally from Montana. And he kind of like came up in California churches. Actually, he came up through the same church that Pierce came up through, the Bethel Church. And he like came through town one spring and did an event at the same church, the church that the buildings that Pierce owns. And while he was staying in Spokane, his like he had this fancy guitar, and it had some kind of like sentimental value to Sean. I don't know. I can't remember exactly. It was like he was given to him by some famous Christian musician, and he had it stolen out of the back of the car that he was driving. Somebody had like broken his window and stole the guitar, and so Sean put out like a call to the kind of like the local like church community and some of the people who do like street pastoring work in Spokane, go talk to the homeless folks and like hand out food and ask if they can be prayed for or whatever. And this guy named Dean McCarty, this old like street preacher guy who was a member of On Fire Ministries, like went out and he was really well connected. He knew a lot of the homeless folks downtown, and he tracked the culprit down pretty quickly. Like he was talking in a food line to some people about this guitar, and the guy who stole the guitar, his name is Zach Williams, like walked up to him and just said, "I took the guitar, and I'll get it back for you if you want me to." Zach was gonna pawn it, but he just kind of like fessed up to it, and Dean freed up a little bit of money from him and some other members of On Fire Ministries to like pay Zach for giving the guitar back. And they got the guitar back, and there was a lot of like social media generated out of this. One of the tactics that these kinds of folks use to to really promote themselves as like they take like redemption stories and they like try to play them up as much as possible. And Sean Foyt saw this as like a redemption story, and so like it was a miracle that his guitar was found. I mean, like people were out there on the streets and they went and like consciously found his guitar. It didn't just turn up out of some like halo or something. Yeah.
Finding getting stolen property back in Spokane though is kind of a miracle. Like just saying, like that's.
How many bikes have you hunted for?
Yeah, and I've there's not. They've never turned up again.
Yeah.
They're living in a farm upstate, I think.
Maybe it was a miracle.
My old laptop too.
So, like, there's all this media generated out of this, and Christian publications start following the story and they're writing about this worship pastor's redeemed guitar, and Sean Foyt, like, he didn't want the story to be over, and so he was coming back through town, and he did a big concert here that August, and during the concert he had the same guy, Dean McCarty, go out in the streets and find Zach and bring him to the concert, and they made a big, like, it was toward the end of the concert. Zach like shows up on the stage. He just kind of like walks in from the back, and he's being escorted by one of Sean's frontmen, Jay Koopman, and Jay and Sean kind of like hug Zach and they like accept him, and they make this big show of like forgiving Zach on the stage, and Sean's talking about like what a miracle is. Zach's pretty quiet this whole time, and then later they take him out onto the steps and they baptize him, and the pastor Matt Shea he baptized Zach with help from a couple other people in a horse trough, and so you know, like there's all this media being generated about this. About a week later, Sean Foyt goes on Pete Hegseth's show on Fox News. Yeah, yeah. Our current defense.
I want to make sure
secretary.
the audio got Erin's very loud sigh,
Just a deep
exasperation sigh.
Yeah.
To be clear,
all of these things, and Hedge was telling me ages ago that they all connect and they're all important. And he reminded me of the guy from Always Sunny pointing at the whiteboard. But you know what? He was right.
And so we wanted to figure out like what the real story was. Luckily, we work with a local street photographer named Ben Tobin who takes these gorgeous images of downtown Spokane. He also knows the unhoused folks downtown pretty well, and he talks to them a lot, and he knows the communities. So he was able to help us find Zach, and it just so happened that he had actually been at Zach's baptism and had a bunch of like gorgeous photos of this ritual. So we tracked down Zach, me and Ben, like he helped me find him, and we took him to Adelano's, and Zach tells us the story about how, you know, yeah, he'd stolen the guitar and he brought it back, and he knew Dean McCarty, but he did not want to be at the event. Like a team of street preachers approached Zach, and they pressured him to come to the event, and he was like, okay, like reluctantly like came to the event, and they put him up on stage. He didn't know any of this was being filmed, that there were photos taken. Like he didn't know that his images were going to be circulating kind of virally in Christian media circles. The interaction between him and Jay and Sean was over, and he thought he was free to go. As he left, a bunch of people from On Fire Ministries kind of like surrounded him, and they wanted to put him into treatment. They were like, "Are you willing to go into a treatment program?" Zach's he uses fentanyl in pretty heavy ways. I don't know if he still does. I haven't talked to him in a while, but at the time he was using fentanyl a lot, and he wasn't ready to quit. And he was like, "No, I'm not going to go into treatment." And they were like, "Okay, will you at least get baptized?" And he was like, "No, I definitely don't want to be baptized." And he said that they kind of like pressured him for like 20 minutes. They said, "Oh, come on, man, you got to get baptized." And he finally relented and said, you know, amid several expletives, said, okay, fine, I'll do it. And he let them baptize him. He said the water was freezing cold. And like they gave him clothes, and then they filmed the whole thing, and then they put him back out on the street. And Dean McCarty kept in touch with Zach, but nobody else from On Fire did. But Sean later went on like kind of this national interview tour where he did interviews about this event, and he said that like he had found Zach housing, and that Zach was now clean from drugs.
Wow.
And just like stuff that
Good job, Sean.
I don't know whether Sean had constructed these falsehoods in his head, but like he never bothered to really clarify or go back and like check with Zach about how he was doing. The last I heard about Zach, he was being held at the Spokane County Jail. He had a number of warrants out for his arrest at the time that we talked. But yeah, I mean, that was like, I wouldn't say that's like fun to report on, but it was a really like
humanizing.
Yeah, just like, you know, Zach talked about, and Zach, you know, like he committed some very serious crimes, and like he had a lot of problems in his life that he probably wasn't dealing with very gracefully. But he, you know, he was also had been unhoused since the time that he was 11. He was 33 at the time that I met him. Always in Spokane, and he just kind of like his life was confined to this like kind of probably 10 square block area downtown that he didn't go outside of because he was, you know, he worried about being arrested, and he wouldn't panhandle because there's laws against that in Spokane. He instead resorted to like less conspicuous, I mean more serious but less conspicuous crimes like stealing people's property out of their vehicles, and that's how he kind of survived. But he said like, yeah, he said to me, he was like, I asked him like what he would want to say to people, and he said, you know, like unhoused people are just, you know, like we have rough lives, we might look rough, but like we're just human beings like everybody else, and we want to like we want connection, and we want community, and we don't want to be exploited. Yeah, it was a really like meaningful experience. I don't know if it was fun, but I definitely like enjoyed meeting Zach and talking to him, and yeah, that's kind of how that story went.
Yeah.
There's a value, I think, in it. Whenever we can provide as journalists, like texture and like sometimes are like there's an intention to try to make our narrative simple, but sometimes I think complicating a narrative can be really valuable. And I think when it comes to homelessness, the narrative is almost always significantly complicated, and it's like hard. It's not a person where the person can be sympathetic, but also like do some really bad things at the same time, and you've got to hold those things in tension because there's all these forces out there that want to flatten it, and sometimes our job is to like show all the jagged edges, and that's what you did really well with that story.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the kind of controlled narratives about it are very simple in one direction or another, and getting to spend all that time with Zach and hear from his voice and his words what that experience was like, and like who he was as a person beyond just the guy that Sean Foyt brought out on stage was really impactful. And I'm so glad you took that story, because I don't think I would have done as good of a job with it.
I think like I don't think that's true, but I do think that yeah, like the narratives around that are very simple. It's either the fall, right, where like somebody has fallen into, and Daniel has experience talking about, you know, like the trajectories of unhoused folks' lives. I think we all do, but like it's never as simple as like a redemption or a fall. It's always more complicated than that.
All right. Well, we're going to go to a brief message from our underwriter, which makes programming like this possible. Daniel's headed out, and Hedge has to leave shortly after, and we're going to kind of change over to a new cast of characters. But before we do that, we are going to play a brief underwriting message. Cool. So that's our underwriter. Again, if you are just now tuning in, you might not be aware, but we are in the middle of the KYRS Spring Fund Drive right now. For 23 years, KYRS Thin Air Community Radio has broadcasted a diverse range of shows covering a wide range of topics, proving that the Spokane community is only as powerful as its community members. Please make a pledge today by calling us now or donating online to keep the spirit of community radio alive and well. We've got some volunteers on the phone here ready to take your calls if you're able to donate. And that phone number is 509-747-3807. If you're maybe more of an introvert and you don't feel like talking on the phone to somebody, you can donate online. You can also text Give KYRS to 44321, and you can go ahead and become a supporting member that way. We're free range, and we are in the studio today trying to think of some fun that we have had at our jobs, which can usually be a little bit depressing. We just heard from Daniel and Hedge about some, I don't know, fun is always more complicated than what you think of when we talk about journalism, because again, we're usually working on topics that are a little bit heavy or sad, but we do manage to carve out some ways to have fun, or at least to take pleasure in the kind of humanizing, nuanced work that we get to do a lot of the time. I know you have to leave soon, Hedge. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about before we set you free?
Well, actually, I didn't have anything else I wanted to talk about, but Pascal and I were talking about, and I don't know if you want to talk about this. We were talking about, like, I realized that I didn't know Pascal actually did an internship with us.
Yeah.
How long ago was that?
Two summers ago?
I'm really bad with dates, but it was
the summer.
I started last year, like, as the editorial producer in January 2025. I was an intern up until I think the previous summer-ish, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds
so
right.
So, little bit, yeah.
But I wondered, like, I realized that I didn't know kind of like your trajectory. Like, how did you get interested in the Range internship, and why do you want to work in independent media? I mean, I think that's something that we want to talk about during the fund drive, is like why independent media is important. But what attracted you to it, and why are you here?
Yeah. So I guess to start from the beginning, also, how much time do you have? That way I can yap or
I've
shorten
got
the
to
yapping.
leave in about 14 minutes.
Oh, okay, cool. Plenty of time.
We got time.
Sweet. Yeah. So I took an internship class, or I had to do a credit for like my filmmaking program. I was emailing people and was like, hey, I was just cold emailing, like cold texting, or like kind of reaching out, not texting, but was like, hey, like, I need an internship credit for my program. Do you guys have room? And Range was actually the
Val, right?
Yeah, I think it was Val who reached back out. Yeah, and she was like the first person to respond, like in a timely kind of way. And I was like, well, shoot, I really need this credit. And Val was like, we love your work. Like, we want to have you on, I think, for like the media kind of side of like videography and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I was like, cool. And I got to practice my skills in that way. But I remember like I was emailing a lot, and I was just like, honestly, at that point, I was like, I just really need this credit, so I'm going to take it. And it was really fun. I remember I was looking through like the old, the old articles that I've done with like Holly, who is also an intern at the same time, where we went to the Pride exhibit. I think that was
the Pride
2024.
history and remembrance.
Yeah.
That was such a good story.
Yeah, and I was like looking back at that. It was really cute. I'm really glad we got to do that, and like just like little projects like that. And then kind of what kept me like interested in it is like I love documentaries. I haven't watched as many as I want to in the past like year, but I really love documentaries, and I think that like journalism is a really like it kind of intertwines in a lot of ways, at least the skills and like interviewing people, and I'm still getting better at interviewing people. I'm working on those skills, but that's kind of what keeps me here, is like trying to like practice those skills and like kind of learn more, and like just kind of getting to know also people too in like the journalism kind of field, because I feel like there's a lot of overlap depending on like if it's video or audio or even just like written works too. That's how it was, Hedge, is because I was cold emailing people, and Val was the first one and only person to say yes. So
Well, I'm so glad we said yes because now you're here with us forever.
yeah.
I agree. I think like that the documentary like filmmaking thing is really like, and I don't know anything. I wouldn't even know where to start. But I do know there's like, I think of like when I watch documentaries, I think of them as journalism. Like I think that they're like, and there's a spectrum, right? Like some of them are a little bit more like
artistic.
Yeah. But I think that like I definitely like all of the skills that you need to craft, you know, a good story for print, like you need them in addition to like understanding all the technical aspects of like camera work and like audio, which that's where I get lost, is because I usually just have my phone and a pen and a pad. But yeah, I think that like I think it's just like I think that's like kind of the next level up. Like I think of a documentary as like either like a book project or like a large magazine article that you would get commissioned and spend like 6 months on for the Atlantic or something like that.
There was a documentary that I watched with a fellow journalist friend on the scandal around Anthony Weiner.
Who is that?
Wow. Okay. I forget that. I mean, we're close to the same age, but I feel like we're kind of different waves of political consciousness, like the kinds of politicians that we experienced growing up. But he was what's a delicate way to put this? He had a bunch of cheating on his wife scandals.
Oh, okay.
But he was a New York politician. And after the first sort of cheating on his wife scandal broke, they decided to stay together. And then he was running a campaign after that first scandal that a documentarian got to follow really closely and got a ton of like really interesting footage, stuff that maybe a more traditional journalist would never have been able to get access to because a politician wouldn't give a journalist, or like probably wouldn't give a journalist that kind of access. But because it was like a documentary, this camera crew got in there and got some really like compelling, interesting stuff. I would recommend watching it as like an intersection of documentary and journalism.
What is it called again? Or who's it about? So I can look it up
Anthony
later.
Weiner.
Okay, I will remember that for sure.
You will remember
the
that.
last name.
Just wait till you get to the kind of, not pen name, the pseudonym he was using on dating apps.
Oh no.
It's so funny.
Don't spoil it for me.
I
'Cause
won't.
I actually do
I
want to
won't.
watch that documentary. I will say also another reason I like decided to. Basically, Luke had offered me a job, and funny, I missed his Slack message because I didn't have Slack downloaded initially. So he texted me and was like, "Hey bud, how are you doing?" And then when I
That's such a
re-downloaded
Luke
Slack, I was
text.
like, "Oh wow, I missed this like entirely," for like the editorial producer role. But the reason I said yes is because I remember you guys had a community journalist organizer, or like a community journal. There was like a role that I applied for, and
Back
there was something.
when we had the documenters program.
Yeah, with the documenters program, and I was like really interested in that, but I think there was something about like the funding fell through. I'm not
Yeah.
really sure what happened, but that I wanted to keep going at that point, but you know, it's like that role wasn't there anymore. But I just at that point I was like, I think this would be great to kind of have my intersections of like my previous like organizing work in that role plus like journalism to kind of learn too, and like kind of bring like maintain but also build upon those like community relationships. But that's why I'm also like I am glad to be here also because I'm learning like a bunch of stuff and being able to be like on the air. This is my second time on the air actually.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the first time was I forget if it was who was it? I thought we were on the air at the same time.
Maybe.
It was me and
No.
you and Val.
Oh,
and we were
okay,
here.
okay.
What were we talking about?
We're talking about something. You can find it on our website,
We were talking about
rangemedia.co, on our podcast page. But yeah, this is my second time on the air, so just kind of learning also how this works
you usually
too.
do like pre-recorded stuff.
Yeah.
I know I've heard your voice on the pre-records that we do.
Yeah.
You do a lot of editing, a lot of like thinking about how to compile these interviews or this conversation into a 55-minute segment. And it's definitely a different experience talking live on the air. Are you having fun?
I am actually. I'm very nervous because I don't think I could talk for this long, but having silence is probably not the best.
I mean, we could just sit here silently until you call 509-747-3807 and donate to become a member at KYRS to support independent media.
Oh, okay, that's too silent now.
It's a.
I was waiting for it.
I want to talk about.
I was doing a bit.
Oh, okay.
I want to talk about the T-shirt.
Yes.
It's cool. It's
Can we even say the words on the T-shirt on air?
Wait,
They're not bad words.
Okay.
Yeah. These words are fine. All right. So so we can't you can't see it if you're listening. This is an audio medium. Always have to remember this. But if you do the $120 or more donation,
Which is just $10 a month when you really think about it.
yeah, it covers an entire year. You get the KYRS newsletter, you get the KYRS bumper sticker, you also get this T-shirt that has an image of a big, old school, kind of like shoulder radio, and inscribed on the radio is the phrase "This machine kills fascists," which is kind of one of our modes of operation at Range is that posture.
Independent media is truly the backbone of keeping people informed in a way that isn't controlled by billionaires or the government. So before I go too far down that rant, just know that you can support that kind of work by calling 509-747-3807 to become a member, or you can also text Give KYRS to 44321. Cool. I know you have to slip out, Hedge. Do you want to say your goodbyes?
I do want to say, this is just a thought that's in my head that I feel like I have to get out. The silence that you're talking about, yes. We often do. It's so different being on the radio than it is doing normal, out in the street, field journalism. Silences during an interview are normally it can be one of your biggest strengths because you run out of things to say, and if you can hold your tongue long enough for the other person to get nervous, they'll often spill the beans. That's fun, but it doesn't work on the radio.
No, you just get annoyed and flip the channel. Although, sometimes silence is better than ads. And one of the coolest things about KYRS is that there are no ads. No ads. You might hear underwriting announcements occasionally, but those are always very short and they're different than ads. And we do not have ads. And so that is a very cool thing about KYRS and independent media. And you can help keep that alive by calling 509-747-3807.
Erin's doing a great job.
Speaking of independent media, I have to go to Cheney because there's another independent media organization that I work with, the student paper at EWU, Eastern Washington.
Is it truly independent if it's for a college?
They are independent. They make all their own decisions.
That's cool.
And it's it's a pretty cool college paper. A lot of college papers are formally owned by the institution, but this one is independent. But it's been awesome hanging out on the radio. You guys, best luck.
We will hold
the next
down.
hour and 13 minutes.
We've got this.
I'll see y'all soon.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye, Hedge.
Bye.
Now it's just Pascal and I. We have another member of the Range team who will be popping in after he finishes some editing work that he's doing. I wanted to share, I guess, some work that I've done that I would consider fun, which again, it's so rare in this job. So I'm going to tell you something that I thought was fun, and you might think, how could anyone have fun doing that? But to be honest, sitting down at city council meetings for when I first started this job, that was some of the most fun that I've ever had. These meetings can be so long. I know you've had to scrub through them, Pascal, looking for some quote or another.
Is it still fun now for you?
It's not as fun, I will say. I kind of got inoculated to the fun of it. But when I was first becoming a journalist, some of the best advice I got for learning to cover the city beat was to just go to the meetings in person. You meet sources, sit through them all. watch the committee meetings when you can, or the agenda review meetings. And you'll start to build a knowledge base. And it's true. Like, after 1 year of that, I started to be like, oh, I remember these conversations happening last year. And after 2.5 years of it now, I really feel like I've got my feet under me. But going to sit at those meetings, I started live tweeting them. And now I live post them on Blue Sky because Twitter's kind of dead and is now X, and it's just full of like bots and spam and white nationalism. But for a while, I was live tweeting these meetings. So I would just sit down there, and every time something happened, I would just post about it on Twitter. Whatever a council member said, some insane commentary that somebody gave. And sometimes there was really, really interesting stuff. Like, there was a meeting that Hedge and I went to together, actually. And I think this was the first city council meeting I went to. And it was after that concert, that Sean Foyt concert that Hedge was talking about earlier. And this turned into a political scandal for then Mayor Nadine Woodward, who was also at the same time running a campaign to be reelected as mayor. And she went on stage, and Matt Shea prayed over her. And the images from that and the story from that became pretty big news. Because again, Matt Shea is like an alleged domestic terrorist, got some pretty extreme beliefs. And so this is like a political scandal. The city council was voting on a resolution to denounce Woodward's choice to go on stage and just be like, we don't approve of that behavior. Resolutions don't really do anything besides making a formal statement. It's like, here's how we feel. And the room was packed with a ton of people who were there to be like, this violates my freedom of religion when the council says they don't like it. And there was stuff like prayers being read and somebody leaving communion packets and wafers out at the like podium that people speak from, inviting council members to come take communion. Just some really, really interesting stuff. And after a while of going to council meetings, I started making these little bingo cards with the other journalists where we would try to predict like what's going to happen at this meeting. And we'd make guesses. There's this one person who comes to council and like very frequently has some very angry things to say. And oftentimes he'll sign up to speak on the consent agenda, and he will start off his spiels by being like, I do not consent. And so that was one of my bingo squares. One of the council members bringing up what high school they went to, just like stuff like that. And
do you guys still do that?
Well, okay, so
how can I
made
join?
The mistake of posting my bingo card online one week for people to follow along with.
Okay.
And somebody told the council members about my bingo card. And instead of, like, they weren't mad about it or anything. There wasn't anything, like, necessarily inherently insulting on it. But they started playing into it, like doing one of the things that was on the bingo card.
But that just defeats the purpose.
Right.
Then. Okay,
and
wait,
so that made it less fun because I was
Yeah.
like, okay, you got a hold of my card and now you're talking about where you went to high school because you saw that would cross off a bingo square for
They're playing
people.
too secretly. They're just playing
Some
along.
of the council staff were
Wait, that's
playing
funny.
along.
Okay,
And so
yeah.
it was funny, but then it made it less fun to play bingo. So I've kind of given up on bingo for a little bit. But maybe one of these days I will go back down to council with bingo cards.
Starting after their summer break, maybe like it'll be long enough where they won't remember, and then after this spring fund drive, that's plenty of time so you can make more cards.
I've got to think. I've been watching virtually instead of going in person because I did just there was a lot of really long meetings in a row, and I realized that I wasn't having fun anymore, and it was turning my Mondays into 12-hour days, which made the rest of the week really drag. So I've kind of had to mediate that once it became not fun anymore, and I just go now when there's something that I'm really tracking or paying attention to. But maybe I will have to bring the bingo cards back.
I was going to ask, I'm curious, for that meeting where it was former Mayor Nadine Woodward with, was it Matt Shea who was praying? How long was that meeting where he said people were like, I'm curious, do you remember how long?
Well, so I ended up having to leave early because
Okay.
every device that I owned died because the meeting was so long.
Okay.
And I went home and I plugged everything back in and I was like watching it. They have, like a live stream. So once my stuff came back on air, I was watching the meeting from the live stream. And I think it went until midnight.
Yeah,
And I still don't
'cause-
know if that's the longest meeting. Last summer, I was on vacation in New Orleans for a reporters conference. And I remember getting a bunch of texts at 2:30 a.m. because New Orleans was 2 hours ahead.
Yeah.
Because the council meeting had gone that long, so till past midnight in Spokane. And there was some hinky stuff that was happening at the end of the meeting where something that they had voted down earlier in the night then got brought back up for reconsideration really, really, really late into the meeting after a bunch of people had gone home because who wants to be at City Hall for 6 hours?
Yeah.
And I was getting all of these texts about it, and it was 2:30 in New Orleans. And I was like, the one day that I'm on vacation and this meeting is, a marathon 6-hour session.
Oh yeah, it's great. Sorry, it's just funny because that's so long, but do you know, because I'm not super familiar with city council rules now because they've changed so much in the past forever. Do you know, can they vote on to stop the meeting early if there's a certain time that it runs to, or is that just they have to make that decision as needed? I don't know. How to
I
phrase
don't
that, but-
remember what it is in the current draft of the rules because there used to be a thing where the meeting automatically ended at 10 basically.
Yeah.
And then they would have to keep voting to extend the meeting by another half hour or by another hour to keep doing business. And I don't know under the current rules package what that time is. And then they're about to vote in, or I think on Monday they did vote in a new rules package. So I haven't had a chance to go see is there a time when the meeting automatically ends?
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
just
know.
curious about that because 12 or midnight is that's super long because the meeting starts at 6 p.m.
Yeah,
right?
and for council members, that is a long day. They have a noon committee meeting, and then at 4:30 or 3:30, they have their agenda review session. So they would have just been in meetings all day that day. Okay, it is 2:56, which means we have to do our legal ID. If you are listening right now, you're listening to KYRS Medical Lake Spokane, 88.1 and 92.3. Ordinarily, we wouldn't have been on the air this early. We would be just sitting down at the station getting ready to talk to you. But because it is the KYRS Spring Fund Drive right now, we got to start talking at you an hour early, and you still have an hour more of listening to me beg you for money. So a really great way to get me to stop begging you for money is to please call 509-747-3807 and pledge to support KYRS for the next year. You can pledge $36 for the whole year, which is just $3 a month, if my math is correct. And that helps KYRS maintain their radio, satellite tower?
Broadcast tower, yeah.
Broadcast tower, pay staff, keep all of this running. It also gets you access to the KYRS newsletter and a free, very cute bumper sticker. If you can spare $10 a month to support independent media, you can get that newsletter, that bumper sticker, and a KYRS t-shirt with the very cool new "This Machine Kills Fascists" art on it, which is pretty sick. You just heard the dulcet tones of Luke Baumgarten,
Hello,
who
everyone.
has now joined us in the studio. We're talking about fun because it is the Fun Drive. So we're sharing some fun that we've had while doing this sort of miserable job.
Oh, wow. Fun, huh? Just dropping me right into it.
Well, I can keep talking while you think about it, but
Well, Erin, your outfits are always fun.
thank you.
And so I come to work every day wondering what...
If I'm going to dress like a 13-year-old boy or like an artsy musician or a goth.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, I think just being in a newsroom and all of the smack, we talk, just about the news and about everything. The commiseration that happens in a newsroom is it's an experience kind of unlike any I've had in other life. It's sort of like akin to, the crap talking you and your friends might do if all of your friends were like the most informed people on a given topic. And so it's really fun. I think so. And then we bring a little slice of that to you every week.
I do love getting a beer with other journalists and just like complaining about, the city council members are doing this week, or like, why was the county commission meeting canceled? Like, It's just stuff that you feel like it would be really boring, but because we're also mired in it, it's so nice to be able to have that kind of back and forth with other journalists. I was thinking about this fall, which was both one of the busiest and most stressful times for me as a reporter with elections, but also some of the most fun I've had. I think that, you originally brought me on as a community organizer before I switched over to reporting, but I've never really lost that passion of how do we bring politics to the people? How do we make this interesting to people outside of our little journalist bubble?
Right.
Like, how do I make, somebody who's just tuning in from their car radio care about Ordinance 3467? And so we've been kind of experimenting over the last couple of years that I've been here. And this fall, we got to do just a couple of really fun events right back to back. We had one right here at the library in partnership with KYRS, which was a debate between all of the city council candidates that we hosted live at the radio, or live at the library. It broadcasted on the radio. It's streamed on YouTube. Me and a couple of other local journalists got to ask all of these candidates questions, and they got to mingle with people live afterwards. And that's the kind of independent work that KYRS makes possible. You can support that, and you should support that, and you can do that really easily. You might not want to call. I don't know. Sometimes talking to people over the phone makes me anxious. So you can text instead. If you text GIVE KYRS to 44321 right now, you can get set up with becoming a member and supporting this independent radio. You can also do it online. At KYRS. I think it's just KYRS.org. Somebody please tell me if I'm wrong. I'm sure it's on one of these pieces of paper in front of me, but if you Google KYRS Thin Air Spokane, the way to support online will quickly pop up.
Yeah, they'll have their membership button right on there.
I also got to see Luke in really short shorts this fall for another fun event that we did.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that one, Luke?
Was that Spokane Spiciest, or is that just me every day after it gets above 70?
Spokane Spiciest is the specific example I was thinking of.
Yeah. That was. I really think about that as that was your idea, Sellers. I was kind of a tough sell because for reasons unrelated to journalism,
Trauma.
I have quite a bit of live event trauma, but we did it at the Guardian, which is this really adorable former church that's been turned into sort of a, kind of a punk
circusy,
burlesque
aerial arts.
Yeah, event facility. And we got, I think we were, one of the things with live events is they cost money that, like more than like running a digital website, which is most of what we do. And so you got to think about budget. You got to think about how many people are going to actually show up. We send out, at this point, we're sending out 15,000 emails every time we send our newsletter. That's pretty awesome. We have a pretty big audience at this point. That's super exciting. The question I always have, again, event trauma brain, is like, do we, is even 1% of these people going to come buy tickets to an event? Like, would they show up if we asked? And the answer was, yeah, we sold out the event. It was a mix of people politically. Like, we had some pretty far right folks there. We had some,
pretty progressive folks there.
And just, the civically engaged. And it was a really fun, how did we describe it? It was basically like hot ones, but like rather than being one-on-one, it was each council member.
Like a face-off.
Yeah, face-off, yep.
Yeah, I got to be on stage this beautiful stage in this beautiful church. We did like Val and I put together a scenic dressing to like kind of give it this like Renaissance-y, medieval but spicy flavor. We like went on this thrift run to go find thrift decor for the table, and we found these fake plastic spicy peppers and all of this like gold and red Baroque feeling decor. And then on either side of me, were the candidates for each given seat. So we kind of did these like 3 batches, and we got incredible local chef Tony Brown made these different hot wings of 5 different levels of spiciness.
A James Beard nominated chef made hot wings for us.
Yeah, and then brought them out, and like as the wings got progressively spicier, the questions that we asked the candidates got progressively spicier. So
we also, because when in traditional debates, there's always the concern about like talking over people. If you've watched, like, just think about, you may not have watched local debates, because who actually watches local debates? But like think about like presidential debates you might have watched. Like one of the issues is like, depending on the kind of candidate, like there might be a lot of like over talking, there might be interrupting, whatever. So, and then obviously politicians like to hear themselves talk. And so I think it was built into the format because we knew we wanted to kind of riff on hot ones. But like what I didn't realize at the time was just how effective really spicy food was going to be at making people who love to hear themselves talk shut up.
And if they wanted, like if their opponent said something that they disagreed with, they could offer a rebuttal in the same way that most debates offer a rebuttal. But you don't get that for free. If you wanted to do a rebuttal, you had to bite into a habanero.
Yep.
You had to take a big bite of a habanero, and before you could like process how that was impacting you, you had to offer your rebuttal.
I specifically remember
actual pepper.
The actual pepper.
Yeah.
Like, just a raw habanero that I think we picked up at like Super One the day before. And I remember, because I was sort of, you were the host and I was kind of the MC, and I felt like it was kind of my job a little bit to enforce the rules.
Like keep people on schedule and time.
But just like being like, all right, not only do you have to bite into that whole pepper, I want to see you chew a couple times.
Yeah. Oh, it was so fun.
It was a lot of fun.
I'm so sad I missed it, by the way, because this was September, I think, right?
Yeah, you and Val were both like on vacation that week.
Yeah, and I'm like, I was so excited. I was like really hoping that the dates would work a little bit sooner, but it looked really fun, and doing all the little, like when I'm like doing all the little social media clips and stuff was really fun, because I just got to watch all the candidates / some current council members now like eat their way through spicy wings, and it was kind of fun because watching them suffer a little bit was very silly to me.
Yeah.
But the wings looked really good, by the way. I heard. Oh, sorry.
I might have just kicked something.
Did you just kill the radio? Luke unplugged something on
Oh,
accident.
okay, we're good. I
But
think.
I think it's fine.
Yeah. But I'm sad I missed it. Basically.
Yeah.
It looked really fun.
I had a blast until approximately 2 hours after the event ended. And I was in pretty severe intestinal distress because each of the candidates was eating 5 wings, but I was eating along with them because it only felt fair, right? I'm having to like ask it, like I'm terrorizing them. I spent weeks drafting just the most like spicy, aggressive questions I could think of specifically for that like level 5.
Well, you and I went
question.
through multiple rounds of editing those questions.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, if I'm going to be terrorizing you, it is only fair for me to be going through at least some semblance of the pain that you are. So I was eating along with them, and I did it with each, like all 3 batches of candidates. So I had 15 extremely spicy wings by the end of that. And it was a really rough 24 hours, but I think it was worth it.
So was it the eyeliner that you were wearing that was red? Because you sent me a photo after we all went home, you looking a little crazed your eyes had been watering, and you had basically red stigmata. It looked like you were bleeding out of your eyes.
Yeah, and that was after the first round. Now council member, then candidate Sarah Dixit took a picture of me backstage in between the like rounds. I got to go backstage, drink some milk and like reset. And I had worn this like spiky red eyeliner for the event, and after the first one I was like sweating and crying so much that the red eyeliner was just running down my cheeks. Looked like I was crying blood, and then I had to go do it 2 more times.
Honestly, kind of perfect for an event in a former church. It felt very much like, I don't know if I got 2 Zoomers on the pod here, so I don't know if any of you two are familiar with Madonna's Like a Prayer video, but if you are, and those of you listening at home, that was very much the vibe.
Yeah, no, that was probably the most fun I've had doing my job, and I hope, and I think it did, but I really hoped that it would make politics and something that normally feels a little dry and inaccessible like fun for other people too.
Yeah.
You know, election season can feel like, oh my God, I'm getting another stupid mailer at my house. Like I'm passed by 6 billboards with like pictures of sad homeless people on them and like somebody's whole slogan saying that they're going to fix it, or like all of the signs that get littered across public property. But like elections can just be a little stressful, a little sad when it's local. I don't know that people tune in as much as they do when it's national. And so the hope had been, how do we make this feel fun and engaging for folks who aren't as soaked in the cultural milieu of local politics?
I just thought of another kind of fun that would be useful for this extended jag on fundraising for KYRS. Journalism's really hard. It's easier when you have friends. I think the partnerships that we do at Range, including this radio show is a partnership between KYRS. That's awesome. That Spokane Spiciest event, we also partnered. KXLY saw what we were doing and reached out and was like, hey, can we film this and like put it on our streaming service? And so not only is that fun, you know, just to work with your friends, it's also really helps. Like KXLY does TV stuff. We don't do TV stuff. It would be really, really expensive for us to get into TV stuff. KYRS does radio stuff. It would be really expensive and prohibitively expensive for Range to try to also be a radio station. So, you know, the structure of journalism has changed and all of media has changed so much that, like, just us sitting here, you know, wouldn't have even really been a thing 20 years ago. And now, just because the media landscape is in the situation, as people are thinking of clever ways to, you know, stretch their impact, like make their, you know, grow their audience. And that's one of the things we're trying to do here is like, it's cool, you know, doing a weekly radio show, and it's the infrastructure that KYRS has built over the last couple decades that makes that possible for us. And that's really special.
They've been doing that for 23 years. KYRS is celebrating 23 years of commercial-free community broadcasting this year.
Wow.
And that's, like, it's cool to be a part of a community. It's cool to be a part of something. And if you want to be a part of helping keep the lights on and the radio waves blasting, you can call 509-747-3807 to pledge to become a member. You can also text Give KYRS to 44321 if you're more of a texter instead of a caller. And this station really relies on that support. It's grown so much in the last 2 decades. There was a dozen live shows back in 2003 when they got on the air, and now there's more than 30.
That's
all
awesome.
Locally produced programs powered by 6,800 watts. Sorry, Dana was making hand gestures.
Dana was
at us.
apologizing to us. Yeah.
Apologizing for interrupting your
We love Dana, by the way.
Yeah, Dana also helps keep the lights on. Thank you, Dana. And this is such a lovely little community here. We've got volunteers in the other room manning the phones, ready to take your call, get you hooked up to support KYRS. So don't leave them hanging. Please give them a call. They're volunteering their time here. It really is just $3 a month. Like, with the price of coffee these days, that's like half. That's like half of one coffee. For
Half of a drip.
of one coffee.
Half of a cup of drip.
You can support independent news by calling 509-747-3807.
For those of you who have been watching or listening to KYRS for those 23 years, you might remember me guest hosting on an indie rock radio show, the name of which I can't remember, in about 2005 or 2006. And I've actually been trying to remember. I don't think Dana remembers the name either, but it was normally hosted by a dude named Matt Philippi. So if anybody remembers my first forays onto the radio as a 20-something indie rock dork, send us an email about it or something. I don't know.
Or call.
I guess you could call it, yeah.
Send us a news tip about this.
Send us a news tip about my problematic radio takes.
There's also a special on right now where, if you are able to support at $36, that's really great and we appreciate you. But if you're able to support with an $150 donation, we will give you 2 tickets to see Purity Ring at the Knitting Factory on May 23rd at 8 p.m. And those tickets are valued at $100 each, which means you're basically saving yourself money.
You can't afford not to do it, folks.
And also they're like really cool. I was listening to KYRS earlier yesterday and folks were talking about how it was like a Canada band. They're like cool, kind of they sound really rad.
Oh,
and
I'm a
they're
big Purity Ring fan.
touring right now on their self-titled album, which is also called Purity Ring. Thank you to whichever KYRS station dropped that nugget into their broadcast for me to repeat.
Yep.
So there's a lot of cool stuff going on over here. I don't know, Luke, you worked for the Inlander for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
You worked on a lot of fun projects over there, covered local news. I feel like you're always dropping some nugget about some fun story you wrote for the Inlander.
Oh, man.
Is there any that come to the top of your mind when you think about fun doing this work?
Wow. Well, let me think about that. I mean, I guess so one more small fun thing that I'd like to say is that one of the cool things about like being a journalist is like hanging out with your friends or your family, the people you love. Unlike that, though, young journalists tend to all be interested in the stories of their elders,
This is true,
unlike
we
most
are.
of the rest of life. So whenever I drop one of those long pull nuggets from some deep recess in my brain, people are actually interested in it in a way that they aren't about most of the other weird, like if I'm just talking with my friends and family about some random Gonzaga basketball trivia from 20 years ago, eyes glaze over immediately. Not so in the newsroom. Man, we did so much fun stuff at the Inlander back in the day. I do think I might be responsible for getting the only hash pipe on the cover of the Inlander ever for our college issue one year. And I really, really tried to get the inference of IV drug use in there too, but that got cut.
Wow.
So that was the college issue, I think like 2008. Very fun. I don't know. I drove 400 plus miles looking for the best biscuits and gravy in the region. So drove up to Sandpoint, down to Moscow over the course of 2 days with my brother to find the best biscuits and gravy in the region. That was a lot of fun.
How many pounds of biscuits and gravy do you think that you two consumed in your quest?
The Baumgarten boys are big eaters, so I mean, yeah.
And which place was it? The
Yeah.
best.
Oh God, I wish I could remember. So the Inlander recently changed its website hosting, and that article has not come back to us yet.
I'll find it. It's okay.
The place up in it's actually not. It's north of Sandpoint in Ponderay. There was a really good. It's like called the Hoot Owl or something like that. So if you're up kind of in the Schweitzer, if anybody who skis up at Schweitzer, there's a restaurant up there that does really really good breakfast. Down in Moscow, Idaho, I'm gonna blank on the name of this place too. But we just have good breakfast all around.
Did the satellite make the list?
I'm trying to remember. We probably did the satellite. I don't remember where it fell. There were also just different breakfast options back
That's
then
true.
too. One of my favorites. So some of y'all probably know Feast World Kitchen down on 3rd. That used to be Sushiyama, like probably kind of the highest end sushi place in Spokane back in the day, run by a guy named Charlie. I got to do a 17-hour tour where he would, unlike most people who just have their fish flown in, he would drive over to Seattle and then down to Tacoma every Wednesday and then come back on basically in time. That was all of his fish for the week. So he wanted to pick out the fish by hand. So I got to go with this dude, named Charlie to run over. Like literally, he would just run behind the stalls at Pike Place and grab fish, and I was trying to keep up with him. It was sort of like a Keystone Cop situation where I was like taking notes with my pad and pen, and I would look up and I just couldn't find him, and I would have to go like run through Wujimaya or whatever the big Asian grocery is down in Tacoma, Wajimaya in Seattle, and then down to the one in Tacoma. That was a lot of fun. Arts and culture journalism is, if you kind of take the right tack with it and you've got the right kind of, newspaper like the Inlander is, you can just do some really, really fun stuff and give people a view. The other fun part was, so the next day, it's basically the Thursday lunch. They would just do it. It was called the Charlie Special or something. It was like all the doctors in town would come in and have like $100 fresh seafood lunch. And the whole time Charlie was looking for like what his special sashimi was going to be. And so that's also where photographer Young Kwok, who's still at the Inlander, I saw him. There was a situation with a live shrimp that will be in my mind forever. He was sort of sucking the shrimp meat out. And the view I had of it was pretty intense. So.
Wow.
Adventures in food.
I mean, we don't do a ton of arts and culture stuff at Range, but I remember, it was like 2 years ago now, and you were like, you have to write less depressing things. Go find something less depressing. And I came to you with like an arts and culture-ish pitch about the Renaissance Fair.
Oh, yeah.
And how like the Renaissance fairs, or my hypothesis was that Renaissance fairs had become kind of a cultural staple and like safe space for queer people and people of color to find community, which might seem counterintuitive because you're, hypothetically the pitch is that you're doing a Renaissance reenactment,
right,
which one might imagine was not the most friendly time for folks. However, that was kind of my pitch, is that I'd gone to like one or two Ren fairs and I was like, I feel like this is really queer. This is really like, there's a lot of community here, a lot of just stuff that I didn't expect growing up in a small town, never having gone to a Renaissance fair.
Well, and the thing about that story that you wrote, Sellers, that I wasn't even aware of, because it's not really my community, is that like Ren fairs, I don't know if they started this way, but they've become sort of a mix of like historical Renaissance type stuff, or just like kind of pan-medieval like kind of vibes, but then like to the fantasy aspect of it too, where there's like the high fantasy of like elves and stuff as well.
Yeah, and I got to like look into the history of that too. Like the first big one was like the California Pleasure Fair, and it was originally put on by these like English and history professors who were very artsy and were trying to like find a way to get students more interested in that kind of thing. But even back then it was a little like ahistorical because the theatrical element of it was so high. But now, there's like, Baldur's Gate 3 themed after parties at the Washington Midsummer Renaissance Fair, and there's like Viking weekend, and there's the Fae Folk weekend. Like it's
just a much better time to be a geek in 2025 than it was probably in the 70s or whatever.
Yeah, so I just get to like wander around the Ren Fair like 3 meads deep, asking people, why they were there and if they found community there, and saw some people like walking their dogs in full sets of EVA foam armor around and like 2 sapphic fairies making out in the mead garden, and it was just like a really lovely time. And then I got to dive into, talk to a local expert on feminist studies of medieval history and learn about like the first woman beer brewer and like what that said about sexism and culture. And I just had a ton of fun both writing that piece and all of the research.
I did just want to underscore that a second ago, and it passed by quickly, you said 3 meads deep. I just want to say that.
The Ren Fair, it's a special place.
Meads, gross.
What?
It's really sweet. It's not good.
Okay,
it's
but
too
the
sweet.
Carbonated mead is like less sweet.
Okay.
It's like bubblier.
All right.
I've done some home brewing of my own mead at this point, so I feel I can speak on mead a little bit. But yes, there's some mead that's just really saccharine and syrupy.
Because it's made with honey, right?
Mm-hmm. It's like honey wine,
Yeah.
basically. But the kind that I like the best is the kind that's either carbonated, or sometimes they'll do bottles of mead that's like cut with like soda water, that's more
Effervescent, and a little less sweet.
less sweet, little bubbly. Just makes you feel like you're an elf in the summer.
Yeah, it's fun.
And I was going to say, like, not to change the topic about
Oh, you can change
mead.
the topic.
We can only vamp about Ren Fair for so long.
Yeah, well, it's kind of on the subject in a way. Is like events, though, is like there's so many really cool community events that happen in Spokane and in the area. And like, to be fair, I've only worked with Range when it comes to like journalism. I haven't worked with like the Inlander spokesman or anything, but there's just so many cool events that like the Inlander has covered. And like, I think maybe I remember like I was trying to do a pitch about like doing like covering some events, but there was a way that was like trying to find a range angle at it.
Yeah.
A wrangle. But I think that just like having these events and finding your communities there and finding like a space that's so like important, but also just super like feels like home is really important to people. I just want to highlight that also because like clearly the Ren Fair is like such an amazing space. I haven't been to one yet, but I want to.
Some of the work that you do for Range, I know you don't get to do as much event coverage as you would like to, but you do get to, like for our Friday newsletter, like go through all of these community postings and pick out some events to let people know about and feature in the newsletter. And
yeah, and sometimes it's kind of hard though, because it's like a lot of the events, mostly recently I've been arts kind of stuff because that's where I'm at, but we have a Discord server also, guys, but people will post like events sometimes, and like that is really helpful though, because like how can I know what people want to see, like what people are going to that's not just like arts related? And there's been some really cool events that have been happening. There's so many cool things.
KYRS Thin Air Community Radio also provides our region with information about things that are going on in the Spokane community. A lot of that information might be omitted, overlooked, or even censored by mainstream media. And because KYRS is independent and powered by the communities we serve, our radio programs are as rich and diverse as the Spokane community itself. You can make a pledge today to support this kind of work by calling us or donating online to continue to ensure that KYRS can continue celebrating the rich diversity of the Spokane community. If you really want to support creating those kinds of spaces, KYRS also does live events. There's like the Get Loud in the library.
Yeah.
There's we table at a lot of things. I've been low-key pitching that KYRS should throw a goth night in the library where everybody can show up in their goth makeup and just like dance in the library. If you want to see that become a reality, you can call in, make a donation, and ask that KYRS hold a goth night in the library if you feel as passionately about that as I do. Or you can just call and become a member and support at 509-747-3807. You can also text Give KYRS to 44321. And that will get you a direct line to support. If you are listening to this in your car, please don't text and drive. Pull off to the side of the road before you call us or text us, or just hold this in your brain, and then when you get home, you can look KYRS up online and donate that way too.
Memorize the phone number, guys, because I still haven't.
I haven't either, and I've said it like 15 times, but it is 509-747-3807.
I'm still not going to memorize it, I think, by the end of the show. You're really good at that, Sellers, like doing the little segue
Begging
of
for money?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. It's hard for me. It is helpful that KYRS has provided me with a script of like 35 different ways to talk about how important KYRS is for when you go up on the mic and have nothing to say. But when I think about community and building community and informing our community, KYRS really is a integral member of that information system. There's shows in Spanish language. There are, shows that center all of the different cultures that are vibrant in our region. And nowhere else can you hear that in Spokane. And so this work is really, really, really vital. There's a lot of intersections between the work that we do at Range and the work that KYRS does, which makes this partnership so important to us.
Totally.
We're also really excited. We just launched Spanish language reporting on our website at rangemedia.co/range-n-espanol. So if you know somebody that would prefer to read their news in Spanish, like, that's a really cool thing that we're doing now.
And I think one of the things that people don't necessarily realize about the importance of multilingual news is like so we have a new colleague, Daisy Zavala Magana. She's not just writing in Spanish or translating from English to Spanish. Like when folks need it,
she interviewed somebody in Spanish yesterday morning.
And like a lot of times that's somebody's most like preferred language or the language in which they're most comfortable communicating. And so like we're trying to be an organization that like is reporting for the grassroots and like makes, working people feel safe. One of the ways people feel safe if they aren't, a first language English speaker would be somebody who could speak to them in the language they grew up, speaking.
And KYRS does that too with shows like El Puente
that
you can find right here. And if our heartfelt talking about this hasn't inspired you, please let me beg you one more time before we go to an underwriting announcement, you can call 509-747-3807 and become a member. Actually, Luke, can you talk for a second while I pull up the underwriting announcement we're supposed to play?
I would love to. Pascal, you came to us as a filmmaking major, kind of, and now you've done some, audio work with us. You kind of are a jack of all trades in the media space. Like, what have you learned over the years about just like the way different media gets produced and like the different kinds of stories you can tell?
I think that I totally zoned out on that last part of the question. Can you please repeat it again? Not gonna lie.
We were also, I think before you got here, we were talking with Pascal about
a little
how
bit.
they really want to learn like documentary filmmaking skills and the ways that they're finding growing those kinds of skills through working in like audio and getting to do a little bit of reporting at Range. So we talked about that intersection a little bit, but if you wanted to touch more on like what you've learned doing podcasting or radio work with Range, I think that's what Luke was.
Yeah.
Is that what? Okay. Yeah. I think that I currently am doing some reporting on like a story, and I've been finding it a little bit hard trying to get people to like see if they're comfortable talking like for an audio story, like a podcast kind of segment versus like a written work, like having them quoted that way. So that's been kind of hard, like trying to navigate like how to keep people safe, I guess, when it comes to like as sources and like talking to people on the story I'm working on, which Erin, I have to talk to you about after this at some point. I think also like growing my kind of interviewing skills too, because I did take a documentary class for my program, but it's been really helpful to be able to kind of like touch up on those skills or like kind of make them stronger, because I definitely can yap a lot, but there's something about, and like I love listening to people, but there's something about having to like interview someone versus just talking and like having just a regular conversation. It's really different to me, and I'm still trying to figure out how to do that.
I think that's really interesting when folks like there's a trade-off with radio or podcast, and the benefit is that you get to speak in your own voice. Like it's your story, your voice. It feels really intimate and close to people, and I think that can give a sense of control to sources who might be nervous to be able to like really share their story in their voice without having to worry about like a reporter, mediating it or just having to pick like the two best quotes. But also it can feel really scary and vulnerable to like have it be exactly in your voice. Yeah, that's really tricky.
It's so interesting because when I first started journalism, and I'm not even talking about producing for audio, but just the idea of recording interviews was sort of a tougher sell in like 2005. Like people weren't even necessarily walking around with handheld recorders back then. And for most of my career at the Inlander, I wasn't using my phone. I was using like an actual Tascam recorder. it's because everybody now has like a voice recorder on their phone. It's almost become more like it's less of a, at least in my experience, when I'm asking people, I'm like, hey, can I record this? I'll just like hold the phone and like throw it down, and it's less of a big deal than it used to be. And I wonder how much easier that makes audio producing than, for like NPR, journalists in the 90s or something.
I think having a phone is probably a lot more comfortable for people than seeing like a big like
clunky recorder, like pinning a mic to somebody's shirt.
Because that extra step of like putting like a little DJI mic is what we use is like.
It feels nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go to an underwriting announcement really quick.
Oh, I like that reverb.
Yeah. Very kind of deep. I was like dancing to it. I feel like you could throw a techno beat under that and it would be kind of a vibe. You're listening to KYRS Medical Lake Spokane. KYRS Thin Air Community Radio exists because of the support of the public. Right now, you can give a little bit back and sustain by providing sustaining monthly support to continue independent music, local interest, and progressive news programming that's refreshing, engaging, and helps expand perspectives. There's also no commercials. Of course, there are short underwriting announcements, but you're never going to hear, that guy with the voice that everybody knows telling you to please buy used cars. Like, that's not something that you're getting here at KYRS.
Sunday.
If you want to support this work to ensure that we can continue being on the air here, you can call 509-747-3807 right now. We've got these little clappers sitting around the studio that we can use into the mic whenever you call and donate, and I haven't gotten to use those yet, and I really want to. So please make my dreams a reality.
If you don't call in, you better be dead or in jail.
No. I did also want to say another way I think personally to support is like just by listening to the shows if you can, because there's not just like, I know that there's shows that are kind of later in the night too that some programmers do, because it's like I know that there's just more than just like during the daytime.
Yeah.
And if you're like work like a night shift somewhere or something, and you just have like, you're just like a janitor or whatever, you can listen to like whatever
be there
program.
with you.
Yeah. So it's not just us. There's other programs too, and there's a lot of really cool stuff that KYRS does that I'm still learning about because this is my second time on the air. But yeah.
Yeah, there's a big wall in the studio right across from the mics with a bunch of posters for all the shows and old events that have been done here, and like an evening of blues and local Irish music. And it just feels like this radio station brings so many different people, so many different communities together. You can get jazz music, you can get electronic music, you can get Spanish language music, all right here. I personally think that there could be more goth music, but maybe I just need to be the change that I want to see in the world. And that's also
hobby too, Erin.
something that you can do is become a programmer here. We're all community members. Mm-hmm. It requires some volunteer hours. You've got to, of course, get trained on how to use the board and how to not say curse words on the air and how to, how to do everything correctly. But you too can become a programmer at KYRS because this is genuinely a community radio station.
And if somebody out there listening right now is also really into goth music, it would be really great for my mental health if you started a show and occasionally had Erin on instead of Erin having to do that herself.
That's true. Yeah, I just really want to be like driving home and hear Susie and the Banshees, Dana's giving me a thumbs up. Does that mean that Dana has found somebody to run a goth show for me?
I think Dana
No, Dana's pointing at me to run a goth show.
So you should do another show separate from this one too, for fun.
Yeah, because I have a ton of free time.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
We all do. Everyone at Range does.
I can't believe I didn't notice this when we were talking about the Ren Fair. I'm sorry, you're basically wearing a Ren Fair coated jumper today.
Yes, they're little, technically not gargoyles because gargoyles have to have a water feature in order to be considered a gargoyle, but it is a jumpsuit of grotesques. And that was something another journalist in town taught me, actually, when we were talking about, I mentioned something about the gargoyles on one of the local buildings, and he was like, actually,
Those are grotesques.
Those are grotesques.
Are you talking about the Spokesman building?
I am talking about the Spokesman building because they don't gargle. That's the little shorthand.
So they are
Gargoyles
grotesques?
gargle because they're spitting water. So if something isn't spitting water or doesn't have like some kind of water feature but looks like a gargoyle, it's a grotesque. And I think that's cool.
And you can learn more too if you tune in on other shows that we do.
Maybe I would have learned that fact sooner if I listened to KYRS earlier in my life. I feel like somebody has said that on their show. I've been on the air for an hour and 40 minutes and I've got a pounding headache and I'm forgetting how to vamp. But
Luke and I can yap while you drink some water.
Yeah,
if
I'm
you
looking
need.
forward
that's
to
true.
that.
I might actually take a quick.
I'm looking forward to the Aaron Sellers grotesque hour.
Yeah. So I guess it's just Luke and I for a little bit.
Yeah, I guess so.
Second.
Oh, wow.
They're okay.
So, Pascal, since I joined late, are there any questions you would like to ask me?
There's so many, but now that you asked me that,
You can't
I have
think of a single
none.
one?
I am curious, because you guys were talking about like your work at the Inlander and stuff, how I know like we've talked about it and stuff like in the office, but how does your time at Range, like how does it feel? How does it compare to like the Inlander and stuff if when it comes to like reporting wise, like the process of that?
Oh, I mean, I was doing most of the arts and culture writing back then with a little bit of justice work at the end. So I did some sort of like hard news reporting at the very end of my tenure, but it was mostly just interviewing bands and artists and, stuff like that. So in that sense, I think I was talking with Sellers about this last week. One of the things that's really interesting we've just dropped a huge investigation last week, and I remember thinking when I was more of a music writer, and I'm a philosophy major and I love the arts and I studied literature and stuff. So it's like, as an arts writer, you can inject more of yourself and more of your opinion and more of your feeling into things because art's all about interpretation. I was talking about how sometimes it's more nerve-wracking to be like, I've got an interpretation of this band I really love. I hope they like it when you publish it. Like it seems like it should be such lower stakes than like something like we're doing this really powerful investigation that'll hopefully, make change in our world. But like when you're doing hard news reporting, it's sort of anchored by facts. And so if no matter what you're worried about and investigations are super nerve-wracking, you can always be like, did we get the facts right? Yeah, we did get the facts right. We know these things for a fact. So no matter what else people can say about this piece, we know we got the facts right. And that's just something qualitatively different between sort of like hard news investigative reporting versus arts and culture writing. And it's weird to say that it was like sometimes a little more nerve-wracking for me to be like, oh, I hope this band likes my profile. But also it's just, we're now almost as big as the Inlander newsroom, I think, as a team. So we're like, until very recently, I would have said it feels smaller than like, there was just, 10 people in the writing, in the editorial meetings at the Inlander. There's a real sense of community that gets built when you've got a relatively big group of people doing this work and hanging out. We're also, this was all in, before the era of remote work. So everybody was in the office a lot more often. We're more of a hybrid team. Range has an office, but it's been really cool in the first half of the year, this year specifically, to come into the office and see so many people around the table. Mm-hmm. That's actually started feeling a lot more. It's got me feeling like a lot more of what I remember about like newsroom energy being like a bunch of people all working on different stories, but sort of, when Daniel Walters is talking about some Christian nationalism thing he's working on, and Aaron Hedge pipes in with something, you could just see like literally like this really collegial group of reporters who are all have their sort of different beats and different interests, sort of helping each other out and like think through stories. And sometimes it's like, I don't know anything about the topic. Here are my questions for you as you're working on this, whatever story you're working on. It's just a really, really cool atmosphere. And so like I would say in the last couple months, it started feeling more like what I remember, being a 20-something in the aughts at the Inlander where everybody was in the office all the time. That's really cool.
Yeah, because I know that on the topic of like Christian nationalism and like what Hedge and Daniel Walters kind of report on is the Hedge had asked me one time when he was doing interviews with, I'm forgetting who, but it was for like the podcast / radio show. He had asked me to like be in the room, that way I could ask questions, because this isn't a topic I'm super like well versed in, let alone understand any of most of the terms that are like super like embedded into that kind of realm. So Hedge asking me like, hey, if you have any questions, just pipe in during that like interview he did. I'm honestly forgetting who it was with. I'm really bad with names, but like that's been another thing. Like that's something I really appreciate, like of being at the office and kind of in that, in like the physical newsroom, because it's a newsroom. I really like it. But like Hedge asking me like to do that was really, really impactful for me. Like just little things like that. But I don't have any other experience with other like newsrooms, but
I think it's pretty uncommon in journalism, man. Because like the thing is this, like there's a limited amount of space. And I think with traditional media, there's a supposition that you're writing for sort of like a normal, relatively high information news consumer, right? So you take a lot of shortcuts. You don't, and a daily paper doesn't have the space to write about the whole background of a particular story,
right.
Which and that's not, like there are a lot of people that traditional media does not report for. Some of those are explicitly, like when you're an advertising driven, news publication or publication of any sort, you're not necessarily writing for people who are like too poor to buy cars all the time or whatever, right? So you're less thinking about, am I writing for people who have no clue about what we're doing? That's pretty explicitly what we've been trying to do at Range, is like we want people to be able to like understand not just what happened at City Council last week, but like maybe the 3 years of news that led up to what happened at City Council last week. But that's really hard for journalists sometimes, like the people who are actually doing that reporting week in, week out, to not, like what Hedge asked you to do. I guess my point is like what Hedge asked you to do is like a really valuable thing that I think we've been discovering is super, super important to make sure that, again, like Christian nationalism, the flavor of Christian nationalism that has grown up in the Spokane area, Moscow, Idaho, in the Panhandle of Idaho, and over here in Eastern Washington in the last 40 years is now so, it's got so much sort of power at the national level. It's like we're like people who have been preaching these particular kind of Christian nationalist gospels in Spokane are now like a heartbeat away from the presidency, or have the ear of, senior members of the federal administration. And that's wild. And so that's a story that everybody, in my opinion, needs to know and understand. But there's also all of this weird jargon attached to it and all of these weird things. Like there's like 3 discrete, probably different strains of Christian nationalism that a lot of which like are mostly homegrown in Spokane. Those 3 strains don't necessarily like each other over weird specific aspects of theology. And so it's like always this delicate balancing act of sort of making sure you're writing something that is like clear and really gets the nuances of that right, because you would never, for anybody, and I think about this as somebody who grew up in an evangelical Christian household, like I don't want to just gloss over that stuff, because like if my parents were to read that, or somebody sort of that I went to church with, they'd be like, no, that's not true. Like this is wrong, right? Like we want to take people's ideology really seriously, even when it's potentially destructive. And so knowing that like Matt Shea is not friends with Doug Wilson because they believe in a different strain of Christian nationalism is like really, really important. But it's also really easy to get way too far in the weeds so that people get like glaze over or don't understand the bottom line, importance of the work we're doing. So having that be like having you in the room, I think is a really clever way of being like, hey, I've been thinking about this my entire life, because Hedge also grew up in a similar church to me. And he's like, so why don't, Pascal, you are on the other end of that experience spectrum.
Yeah.
So why don't you just like ask, no matter how silly or like, 101 or remedial it might seem, just like ask any question you have. I think it's a really great way to do it. And I think that is the TM range difference, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, and Sellers is back, by the way.
Hi, I'm back.
Hi.
Yes.
I think, wait, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Did I turn the right mic on? Okay.
Yep, you're on.
Yeah, I also have almost no experience with that. And sometimes we'll be in these like reporting conversations and Hedge will be getting so excited about like some story that he has. And I feel that like eyes glaze over, just the confusion of like, wait, how is that important? Who does this relate to? And usually he can like slow down and tell me like, this is why this is important. This is the local connection. But
Yeah.
I do think, and then I'm sure there's times where I'm invested in some really niche city hall drama and I just need somebody to be like, wait, how does that impact real people? Is that like interesting to anybody who's not just mired in this?
And I will say, like, your flock, or you and Lauren, and I think Daniel too, did not for Range, but like republished stuff. Like, up until we like Range started like reporting on it and like publishing stuff on it, it was like I had no idea that was a thing. I'm gonna be honest, a lot of it went over my head for the first like summer last year, maybe, I think, until I listened back on one of the older radio show / podcast episodes on like I think it was called like What the Flock, I think is what the title was.
What the Flock,
yeah, you and Val. It was just listening to that made it a lot easier to understand.
I do think that's like probably the best part about this audio medium is that it forces you to explain something relatively succinctly. Like, I don't get 5,000 words to ramble about it. I have to be like, okay, flock cameras work like Netflix subscriptions. You know?
Yeah.
Okay, we got about 5 minutes left, 6 minutes. I just thought of something that I think will be really fun for you.
Oh, you've
sellers.
got an evil look in your eye.
Oh, no.
It's if that's true, it's your fault because I'm just paying you back for a million times you've done evil things to me. We usually take a summer break for a week when sort of news dies down, and we usually take a winter break, between, the holidays right before New Year. City Council has gotten into this habit of having long-running rules things every couple of years. Should we also take a vacation when City Council just gets into its rule sessions or not?
I wish we could, but sometimes those long debates take 3 months, and that's a really long time to take a vacation.
I mean, I could use a break.
I wrote some snarky line about it in our civics section of like, it's 3 months into 2026, and council may finally decide what the rules that'll govern them for 2026 are. And I was reminded by Councilmember Dillon that they had a very lengthy discussion about the rules in 2024 too. So it might just be like every 2 years they spend 3 months debating.
And Range goes on sabbatical.
Maybe. Yeah, because it's really exhausting trying to keep up with 14 amendments have been filed on this, and I'm trying to explain what they do and how they'll impact you. And then those amendments get voted down at the next agenda review, but they might not have been. They might have gotten voted on that night. So it's all this will this pass tonight? Will this not pass tonight? Will we suspend the rules? Do we have 5 more amendments? Will somebody else introduce a new amendment? And maybe it would just be better for my mental stability if we did go on sabbatical in 2028 next time they have a 3-month-long debate about rules.
That's one of the things that I think has always been really tough for me about legislative reporting, kind of at any level of legislative reporting.
State legislature.
But even at the city council level, it's like sometimes you're packing so much stuff into your brain that then might not even pass or might get completely amended away, or a bunch of amendments that end up getting struck down. I don't think I have the patience. I do not have the patience to be a legislative reporter. I know that for a fact. How do you deal with it?
I was thinking about this because we didn't end up doing very much state legislature coverage this year. Yeah. And last year, there was a couple of bills that I did track all the way through, did these big packages on them. And it was some of my favorite reporting that I've done. But it also, you could just tune in on a random Thursday and the bill that you'd spent hours doing interviews for would just die, not because anybody disliked it or voted against it, but because nobody had it ranked high enough on their priority list to debate it on that random Thursday.
Right.
And so because it missed like a cutoff, all of a sudden that's just like gone. And it's not that anybody voted no to it. It's just that they didn't prioritize it enough to hit this like has to be debated in committee by X day.
That's such an important and interesting aspect of the Washington state legislature, and I think most state legislatures, that's like qualitatively different than both like a city council but also Congress. Like city councils and Congresses are generally in session year round, so like your bill, there's never like an expiration date on your bill, but the Washington state legislature is every other year is there for 120 days, but
The long session, the short session.
every off year is only 2 months. It's 60 days.
Yeah.
And so there are all these bills that are like you're saying, like people might actually like them. They might just not be high enough up the priority list to make it.
And one of the bills that I followed last year that did ultimately die, it was long sesh last year and short sesh this year, which meant that some stuff that died because it like, not that it got voted down, but it just didn't clear a hurdle by a certain day. That kind of gets to be like zombie legislation, like it revives for the short sesh. And this time around, people did feel passionately enough about the bill that I followed last year, which was the Domestic Laborers Bill of Rights, to pass it. And so it's just like so much keeping track of these like minute things, especially at the state level. And because I'm not in Olympia, it feels harder.
Yeah.
At the city council level, most of the time, if something gets introduced in a committee, it will be voted on later and it will likely pass. Like most of the time, they're not introducing legislation they think will fail. The question is just how many different amendments are going to get made to that before it gets voted on. And will the public have a chance to review those amendments before they attach themselves to the bill? And that is what was causing the lengthy rules debate, is that they were trying to change the process so that whenever something got amended, there was a chance for public to comment on that. Like it wouldn't be that you were showing up for council ready to comment about a bill that you love or hate, and then you find out that at 3:30 that bill got, or that ordinance got changed and you didn't have a chance to review that.
Right.
All right, it's 3:55, which means we've made it through a marathon radio session.
Heck yeah.
If you hate our voices and you're really glad that we're getting off the air, you can celebrate that by calling 509-747-3807 and become a member today. If you love us and you want to see this work continue, you can call that same number and donate a little bit more money, maybe $150, and then you'll get free tickets to see Purity Ring at the Knitting Factory on May 23rd at 8 p.m.
You should demonstrate how much you love or hate us with the size of your membership subscription.
And
KYRS.
I close us out then?
Yeah, let's do the legal ID and the closeout and get off the air.
Yeah, so that's our time this week. Free Range is a weekly news and public affairs program presented by Range Media and produced by Range Media and KYRS Community Radio, KYRS Medical Lake Spokane. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.